Whether you're jumping into the newly updated World's Edge or you're grinding out the brand new Ranked Arenas playlist, you need your game to be running at its best. So today I'm going to be breaking down the best Apex Legends settings for Season 10 to give it the FPS boost it needs. Hey everyone, it's FourEyes or Dave here. Welcome back to another video. Today we are on Apex Legends for the release of Season 10. And like normal for new releases of seasons in games, I'm going to be covering the best settings currently to improve your FPS, improve your visibility overall in game, and some gameplay tweaks that are going to improve your gameplay experience tenfold. There's a couple of things I want to cover today, specifically graphic settings, gameplay settings, what you want to put in your Autoexec config file for when the game boots up, your launch options in Steam, as well as what you can do in Origin, and a little tip to improve your FOV beyond what the game allows you to do. So a lot to cover today. If you guys do enjoy, then make sure you smash that like button down below. It really means a lot. It really helps me out in the algorithm, and it honestly just shows your appreciation if you like this video. Also, leave comments down below. I like to get good conversation going on the channel as much as possible. So the process of the different things we're going to do today, we're going to start off by going through the more simple stuff. So if you just want to do the bare minimum, you don't want to go into loads of config files and mess around with that, then you can just do these first bits. And then as we go forward, we're going to be doing kind of more, I guess, optional or complicated things that you might not want to do. So we're going to start off with video settings in-game, the most simple thing we can do to give your game a nice boost. Let's go through these each one by one, and I'll give you guys a breakdown of why we've got it set to what it's set at. So display mode, you want full screen. There are three options here: full screen, windowed, and borderless window. Full screen needs to be your option here. It's the same for every game on PC. Having this set to anything but full screen means that essentially there's things being rendered on your desktop which are taking up system resource when you don't need to. So I do know a lot of people try to run it borderless windowed, but it will make your game lag more than full screen. We want to give our game the complete dedicated effort of our GPU, and that's what full screen does. Aspect ratio, I play at 16:9. If you want to mess around with stretched res, you can go to another video to watch that. It's not something I like using. I like my game to look normal and use the standard 16:9. You basically want to select whatever's native. So if you've got an ultra-wide monitor, you won't have 16:9, but your default one will be your native one to your monitor. Next, we've got the resolution. Once again, I play at native. You can downscale this. If you've got a really low-end PC, then this is definitely what I'd recommend coming to and just downscaling this. It will make your game look more blurry because you're not at the high resolution, and I think for most people, sticking at native is going to be fine. It's just in those little edge cases, if you've got a really low PC, maybe you drop to 1600x900. I wouldn't go any lower than that. Put it at your native resolution, which for me is 1080p. Brightness, I have this set to 50%. I haven't found any need to bring this up. I think if you've got any brightness problems with the game, then it's probably your monitor, so play around with your monitor settings. I don't feel like there's any need to change the brightness. FOV, this is an interesting one. I would recommend that most people just chuck this on the max and learn to play with it like this. Technically, the disadvantage of having a higher FOV is that people that are on your screen will look smaller because you've got more space looking left to right and up and down a bit. The actual target you're looking at will inevitably look smaller, which can make it a bit harder to maybe spot things or keep track of things. But the gains you get from having a higher FOV, including just more information on your screen at any one time, which is really important, as well as the movement in the game feeling a lot smoother, a lot faster, and I'll show you this in some gameplay in a bit. You get a lot out of having this set to 110. Now, later on in this video, I'm going to show you how you can get 120 FOV, which is what I've been using recently, and I really, really like it. But for most people, I think 110 is going to be suitable enough. FOV ability scaling, shove this on enabled, just scales up your FOV when you use certain abilities. When we go to the 120 FOV, that's not going to happen anyway. So this is specifically for the Octane Q and the Bloodhound ult. They both make your FOV increase out. Now, the issue with that is that it actually throws off your aim a little bit because your FOV suddenly changes. So that's one of the reasons why going to 120 FOV is better. Next is sprint view shake. We want this on minimal. I can't show you this until we're in the game, but having this on normal will shake your screen a lot more when you're running around. Not good. We want this minimal. We don't want to have loads of screen shake when we're running. It will make just tracking certain things we're looking at a lot more difficult. Now, I can very quickly go over everything in the advanced section and basically say shove everything apart from NVIDIA Reflex all the way to the left. What this will do is just drop all the settings to the lowest. Usually, I'm not one of these people that just says turn everything on low and that's the best thing to do. I actually go through these things and say, oh, maybe this improves visibility by having this a little bit higher, or maybe you actually gain a decent amount even though you lose some FPS. But everyone agrees, all the pros agree, turning all this stuff onto the lowest possible gives you the best performance and gives you the best visibility, so there's really no reason not to. The only thing I would potentially change here is the texture streaming budget, and maybe turning this up to something like medium. If I come back to my menu, if we just discard this, you can see Octane standing here. You can see all the textures on him are really, really blurry. Now, if you want the game to just look a little bit better, turning this up to potentially like a medium, if we apply that and come back, you now see we've got a lot more sharpness. The game will look better, and you don't really lose much potential FPS running this. It really comes down to how much VRAM you have in your with your GPU. I've got 8 gig of VRAM, so I can run this on medium. But I still opt to just put it on either very low or none, just because for me it doesn't matter. I'd rather have more FPS and make the game run as smooth as possible. For the NVIDIA Reflex, I would recommend you either put this on enabled or enabled plus boost. Most people will just go for enabled plus boost, but I know that some people get better FPS running NVIDIA Reflex to just enabled. It comes down to whether your the process of the game is being at all bottlenecked by your GPU or your CPU as to which one of these you select. The simplest way, without me going too in detail into it, is to try a game with just enabled on and have a look at your FPS values, and then try the game with enabled plus boost and see what your FPS values are. Because for everyone, it performs differently, and I can't give you a defined option of which one to pick here. So for me, just having it on enabled actually makes the game run like 2 or 3 FPS better on average from my testing. So for me, these are all the best settings. So to now demonstrate the gameplay settings and what we've done with those, I've come into the firing range because a lot of that stuff is you can't really show with actually being in the game. So we'll come back into the settings and we're going to head to the gameplay settings. So first setting is interact prompt style. The difference between this, if we have it on default, which is what the game comes with by default, and you look at items on the floor, you get these really big boxes. So if I look at something, I'm trying to find something with a load of information on, probably like this stock. So it shows you that it's an attachment, it's a stock, so it shows you like what kind of attachment it is. It says it's the standard stock, it shows you what it does, it shows you what it can go on, it shows you what it will replace. It's very good for new players if you're just looking at something and being like, oh cool, I'm going to read and see what that does. But for anyone who's played the game for at least a decent amount of time and just wants less visual clutter, you see if I aim at this over here and move up to it, it completely covers up all the other stuff on the floor, so it becomes really hard to actually aim at the right thing. If I come back into here and turn this onto compact, you see instead it just shows you what it is and essentially what it's going to go on in your inventory. That's all you really need to know. It shows you what it's going to replace as well. It doesn't tell you all the ins and outs of what the attachment does, but if you've played the game a decent amount, then you'll know what it does anyway. So not too much of a problem, and you get far less visual clutter. Next, button hints I've still got on, but I mean, it changes at the bottom whether those button hints are on. It doesn't really make any difference having them on. I think it's not that much more visual clutter. And sometimes the game is adding new things into the game, like the heat shields and stuff, which require you to know a button which you didn't know before. So I keep them on. Crosshair damage feedback and damage numbers. These are two things which kind of go hand in hand. If we set this to what it's set at by default, it's set at X with shield icon and damage numbers to both. What this does, if I shoot this bot, you'll see, as I shoot, so we have a lot of visual clutter. We've got 3 things going on here. We've got the X, basically the hit marker effect. If you play COD, you know you get hit markers. You've got the stacking damage number, which tells you overall how much damage have you done. So, for example, I did 56 damage to that guy. If I kind of move to a different area, once I've taken his shield off, I start getting the individual numbers coming up. Now, there's really only one thing here which is actually important. For the damage numbers, we do not need to know these floating damage numbers. These are the one number for each damage event. It's just not useful. The useful thing is having this stacking number so that when I shoot, this bot, I know I hit him for 126 there. So I can say, oh, 126 armor cracked kind of thing. So people can do a bit of maths and realize in their head how much health the guy has left. 28 damage I did overall there. 42 damage I did overall there. That's all we really need. The other thing that we've still got is this big X, which some people might like having. They might be used to having the hit marker, but you don't need it because you've got this stacking damage number. So you know if you're hitting someone. If I aim at, for example, a guy really far away, as one of my friends just comes on the game, and I shoot this guy, I know I'm hitting him because the number's coming up. I don't need that little hit marker X. It's not useful. It's just visual clutter. So I keep it off. So I would set this to crosshair damage feedback to off and damage numbers to stacking. Ping opacity, I put it faded, just less visually cluttering, partially transparent most of the time rather than fully opaque, so you can actually see through certain pings. Obituaries I've still got on, it doesn't really make any difference. Minimap rotation, this is, you can't see it in here, but it just determines whether the whole minimap rotates as you look around. It's personal preference. I like having it on. Weapon auto cycle on empty. This is another one which is a bit personal preference, but the last thing I want is to have a situation where I run out of bullets completely on my gun and I don't realize. Sometimes that happens. Let me grab a new gun so we can show this happening. So we've got 6 bullets in this repeater. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it automatically swaps to my pistol. Yes, technically it's taken some of the control out of my hands, but I don't want to be in a fight, still have this in my hand and be like, I'm going to kill him. And then you click and then it swaps and you're like, oh my god, it's wasted time. At the end of the day, it's going to swap you over anyway, so may as well have it on. Auto sprint, I keep off. I like to have control over when I'm sprinting and when I'm not. It means I can, strafe around without sprinting all over the place. I think you just get more control. Some people I know do actually quite like auto sprint because sprinting is what you do a lot of the time in this game anyway. Double tap sprint, not something you want to use. Jetpack control, I've just left it at toggle because I don't use anyone who uses a jetpack. I think it's only Horizon unless I'm not thinking correctly. So if I'm not correct about that, leave a comment below. Incoming damage feedback, I put this to 3D, gives you the 3-dimensional arrow indicator, just gives you a good idea of where you're being shot from. And then everything else below this, I keep to default, apart from my colorblind mode, which I put to Protanopia, because that's what kind of colorblind I am. If you're not colorblind, then you don't need to have this on for any reason. So that's all of the in-game settings. If you just want that to be the video, then that's good. You guys can leave if you want, but I'd recommend you stick around because we've got more interesting stuff to cover for Season 10. So, next thing we're going to do is play around with our launch options, and there's some really important things in here. So, I'm going to be showing you how to do it on Steam. If you have Origin, you can go to the launch options through Origin as well. I'm not going to show you how to do that today. I'm just going to show you Steam. So, right-click the game in your Steam library, go to Properties, and then you want to be on the General tab, and you'll have the launch options here. So these are the ones I use. I'll go through them each and just explain what they're doing. Number one is this plus exec space auto exec. All of these will be in the description, by the way, of what you should put. This will execute our auto exec config document, which we're going to be making in just a minute. So you put this in now. If you just have this in here and you don't have an auto exec, it just won't do anything. So you can have it in whether or not you have one. It's absolutely fine. Next one is going to be minus or dash dev. All this does is it skips the initial opening like cutscene or like intro to the game, which is really loud. It takes a lot of time out of just the loading process. I don't like it, so I get rid of it by using dash dev. Dash full screen is potentially a bit redundant, but it just ensures the game is launching in full screen every time rather than potentially loading in borderless window, which I've already explained is not good. And it just ensures it's locked in as we want it. Next is plus FPS max 190. This is an interesting one. I only found out about this recently, but all the pros agree that this game runs really bad at anything over around 200 FPS. A lot of you guys might not even be able to run the game at 200 FPS, so this might not even be useful. But for me, someone who can run the game at upwards of like 240 FPS, I've got a 240 Hz monitor, the game actually starts to be way more stuttery and have a lot more issues beyond 200 FPS. So I limit my FPS using this plus FPS underscore max option to 190. And that's what most pros do, and you can't argue with the pros, so I would recommend you put it in here. Next is dash refresh, and then the refresh rate of your monitor. Just ensures the game knows what refresh rate you're playing at and doesn't have any weird issues where it's trying to run the game at some sort of 144 hertz refresh rate if you're on a 240 hertz. Same with if you're on 140 hertz, you don't want to be somehow running at 60 hertz. This might be slightly redundant, but once again for me, I just want to put it in there to ensure that there's no gaps left. The final thing I do is run dash high, which ensures the game is running at high priority in Windows. I sometimes get rid of this when I'm doing recording or streaming with the game because it might conflict with my OBS. But when I'm just playing the game and I want this game to be having all the resource it needs, dash high is very useful. So these launch options are essential to ensuring your game experience is on point. So the last thing we're going to cover today is our Autoexec, including how we can get 120 FOV in-game, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So from your Apex Legends game in Steam, come to the local files area now and click Browse. And what this will do is it will open up the area where all of your files are kept. Go to the config folder, and you will not have, by default, this autoexec.cfg file. It won't be there. So what you need to do to create it, there's a couple of ways you can create it. You could create it from scratch by going to New Text Document and then ensuring you have the .cfg on the end when you work through this, but that can cause some issues because it might end up being the wrong file format. The simplest way you can do this is to take this config default PC config. We're going to press Control-C, or just for the sake of the video, right-click copy, and then we're going to right-click paste, and it's going to create config_default_PC-copy. Next, open up the config, and it's going to contain everything that config just had in it. Now, this is redundant because it's just a copy of the previous one. So what we can do is do Control-A, delete, and we've completely cleared out everything from this config. Now what we want to do is you want to head down into the description, and you're going to click the paste bin link for the Autoexec. Everything that will be in that Autoexec will be the same as what is listed here. Okay? So you're going to grab all that, you're going to press Control-A on that from that website, and you're going to paste it into your to-be Autoexec. Okay? This is a bit confusing because I've already got one. Next, what you want to do is you want to press File and save it. Okay? Then close your config, and then the last thing you'll need to do to ensure this is all locked in properly is to just select this either, or you could right click it and go rename. Make sure you're not changing whatever's on the end. You guys might not even see the .cfg because you might have your file extensions off, but make sure you just change the name to Autoexec, okay? It will not let me save this because I've already got one, so I'm just going to call it Autoexec1, but you would save it as Autoexec, and then you'd have the Autoexec config file. Now, I'm just going to delete this because I don't need it. You should now be in this scenario with an Autoexec with all these things in it. And I'm just going to point out one of the things in here. Everything else down here is very kind of back-end little graphics things that just help with overall visibility. A lot of this stuff is actually probably redundant now, but this is a kind of distributed Autoexec which has been added to and tweaked a lot by a lot of members in the Apex community, so a lot of people are using this now. But what we are doing is adding to the top of it this CL_FOV scale 1.7. What does this do? Well, this is what changes your FOV to 120. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump back in game. But before we do that, there's also a thing here which makes F12, the button on our keyboard, exec the Autoexec. So if we do anything in game which affects any of these settings, we can press F12 and it'll activate. And I'm going to show you that in just a second. Okay, so we're back in the firing range to just quickly demonstrate how the execing the Autoexec works if you accidentally change any settings. You shouldn't have to do this because we've already got it in the launch options, but it's useful specifically for the FOV scale. So currently we are actually at 120 FOV. If I come into the settings here and go to video, it says 110, but it's not 110, and I'll prove it. What I'll do is I'll walk just a bit closer so that these targets are right on the edge of my screen. Then what I'm going to do is come into here. I'm going to drag this over to something that isn't what it said it was, which was 110. And then I'm going to drag it back to 110 and apply it. And if you'll see, the screen no longer has all the targets in, even though it did before. And so now what I need to do to get back to 120 FOV is, as I said at the beginning, we just need to press F12. This will also take a screenshot because it's Steam, but you'll see You saw it zoomed out a little bit. And interestingly, because we're playing Octane, I'll go back to 110. If I activate my Octane ability, you see I zoom out to 120 and then I go back in. If we press our Autoexec, and now we've zoomed out already, and then I activate my Octane ability, no FOV change. This is really useful for Octane players because you do not want your FOV changing. The FOV changing affects your sensitivity in game. So that's why I recommend putting on 120, whatever your skill level, because you can just learn to adjust to it. You get more information. You feel like you're moving so much faster. And it's a lot of fun. So there we go, guys. That is all of the settings for today. I'm going to be grinding out this at the moment because I haven't actually been able to play yet because we're making this video. But if you found this informative, then as I said, smash the like button down below, leave a comment, and maybe subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos very soon. It's been FourEyes Dave. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.